Hey, I'm Lucas. I'm 24 and just settled into a sleepy little town in Vermont a few weeks back. It's not the kind of place that grabs your attention, just modest brick homes, low stone walls, and maple trees shading the sidewalks. It's quiet, the kind of spot where you hear frogs croaking at dusk and smell pine in the early morning air. I moved here to hit reset after a rough breakup back in my old city. My ex and I? Let's just say we were a bad mix. I was after something straightforward, no chaos, no baggage, just a fresh start. I work at a small computer repair shop in town, nothing glamorous, just swapping out hard drives and fixing glitchy tablets. On the side, I run errands for some of the older folks around here, picking up prescriptions or dropping off dry cleaning. It covers rent and keeps me moving. I've got a small rental house at the end of the block, one floor, creaky deck, and a yard I keep meaning to tackle. It's not much, but it's home. The neighbors are friendly enough, giving me quick waves, though I catch their curious looks. New face in a small town always draws a bit of scrutiny. I didn't set out to be the neighborhood fix-it guy, but it just sorta happened. First week in, Mrs. Harper, a kind older woman down the road, asked if I could tighten a wobbly shelf in her living room. Took me 15 minutes and she sent me home with a tin of homemade blueberry muffins. I tried to say no, but she wasn't having it. Then Mr. Grayson, a retiree with a bad knee, needed his hedges trimmed. Before long, I was the guy people called for loose doorknobs, flickering lights, even a finicky thermostat. Felt nice, you know? Helping out, no expectations, made me feel like I was part of something. That's how I met Claire. She's my next-door neighbor. I was lugging a bag of mulch up my front path one evening when I noticed her wrestling with a jammed mailbox on her porch. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she moved with this quiet intensity, like she was holding something back no one could quite place. Without overthinking it, I set the bag down and called over, "Want some help with that?" She glanced up, a little caught off guard, like she wasn't used to being seen. Her eyes were hazel, sharp but cautious. "Oh," she said, tucking a stray lock behind her ear. "Yeah, it's been stuck forever. Meant to get it fixed." Her voice was steady, deliberate, like she weighed every word. "I'm Lucas," I said, walking over. "Just moved in next door. I can check it out if you'd like." She gave a small nod and stepped aside. "Claire," she said, short and sweet, no fluff. "I like that." I poked around the mailbox, found a bent hinge, and had it swinging open in under 10 minutes. She stood there the whole time, leaning against the porch railing, sipping tea from a chipped mug. When I finished, she gave me this faint smile. Nothing big, just genuine. "Thanks," she said. "You really didn't have to." "No trouble," I replied, brushing dirt off my hands. "If it acts up again, I'm just over there." I nodded toward my place. She nodded back, still holding that mug like it was an anchor. "I'll keep that in mind," she said, her tone soft but with a hint of warmth. I grabbed my mulch and headed home, not thinking too much of it, but her face stuck with me. That smile, the way she looked at me like she actually saw me, not just some guy messing with her mailbox. The next day, I got a call from Mrs. Larson, a woman across the street, maybe 40, with auburn hair and a laugh that carries a bit too far. Her husband's some kind of financial consultant, always off on work trips. She said her garage door was acting up, refusing to close right. Asked if I could take a look. I'm no expert, but I know enough to check the sensors and tracks. When I got there, she was waiting by the garage in a bright blue sweater that seemed more about style than function. She flashed a wide grin, leaning against her sedan. "Lucas, you're a godsend," she said, tossing her head back a little. I opened the garage door, found a misaligned sensor, and adjusted it. Took about 10 minutes. The whole time Mrs. Larson hovered nearby, asking questions she didn't seem to need answers to. "You're handy, aren't you?" she said, her voice a little too smooth. I glanced up, caught her watching me closely, and felt a flush creep up my neck. "Just getting it done," I said, keeping it casual. She laughed, rested a hand on my shoulder, and said, "You should stop by for coffee sometime. You know, as a thank you." "I appreciate it, but I've got errands to run tonight," I said, stepping away. She didn't push, just flashed another grin and said, "Whenever you're free, Lucas." I nodded and left quickly. Something about her felt calculated, like she was testing waters I wasn't wading into. Then there was Mrs. Delaney, a few houses down. She's maybe 42, with cropped black hair and a sharp gaze that sizes you up in a second. She called me over to fix a buzzing outlet in her dining room. When I got there, she was in a fitted sweater and leggings, standing closer than necessary while I worked. "You're a gem for doing this," she said, handing me a glass of lemonade I hadn't asked for. Her fingers grazed mine as I took it. I swapped the outlet, kept the chat light, and started to head out. "No need to rush off," she said, leaning against the doorway. "Stay a bit." Unwind. Got another job lined up, I said, fudging the truth but keeping my tone friendly. She shrugged, but her eyes followed me as I left. I couldn't quite pin it down. Back home I'd had people flirt before, but this was different. Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Delaney weren't just being neighborly, there was an edge to it, something that set me on edge too. I didn't come here for games. I just wanted to keep things simple, do my work, live my life. A few days later, I was finally tackling my overgrown yard when I spotted Claire on her porch again. She was flipping through a notebook, her tea mug on the table beside her. I waved and she looked up, giving me that same quiet smile. Something pulled me over. Mailbox still behaving? I asked, resting against her low fence. Holding strong, she said, setting her notebook down. You're keeping this whole street in one piece, aren't you? Her tone was teasing, but her eyes darted across the road where Mrs. Larson was pruning her roses, stealing glances our way. I chuckled, rubbing the back of my neck. Guess I'm the go-to-fix-it guy now. You're good at it, she said, and there was that warmth again, like she saw the effort, not just the result. We chatted for a bit. Nothing heavy, just the crisp fall air, how the maple leaves were piling up everywhere. It felt natural, different from the way Mrs. Larson's laugh carried too far or Mrs. Delaney stood too close. Claire didn't seem to need anything from me. She was just there. As I headed back to my yard, I caught Mrs. Larson watching from her garden. She waved, her smile sharp, like she was in on some secret I wasn't. Claire noticed too, and for a split second her face shifted, just a flicker, like she was guarding something. Then she turned back to her notebook. I didn't know what to make of it, but it lingered. That night, I crashed on my couch with a cider, the TV humming in the background, barely watching. My mind kept drifting to Claire, her smile, the way she looked at me. Then I thought of Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Delaney, their lingering touches, their invitations. They were attractive, sure, but it felt like a chess match I hadn't agreed to play. Claire was different, reserved, authentic, maybe carrying a quiet kind of sorrow. I didn't move here looking for anything, but she made me curious about what could be. It's been a few weeks since I landed in this town, and I've settled into a rhythm. Wake up, tinker with a laptop at the shop, drop off meds for Mrs. Harper or other folks, maybe patch a fence or swap a light bulb for someone. The routine keeps me steady. But lately, Claire's been on my mind more than I expected. Those brief porch chats, her understated smile, they're starting to mean something. We've been talking more, usually in the evenings when I'm done with work. I'll spot her on her porch with a book or her tea and I'll wander over. It's never planned, it just happens. We keep it light. She tells me about the novel she's working on, something about a botanist in the 1700s exploring the New England wilderness. I don't know a ton about writing, but I love how Claire's face lights up when she talks about her novel. I share stories from the shop, customers who insist their laptop just stopped working despite obvious water damage, or how I accidentally delivered a dozen extra apples to Mrs. Harper last week. Her laugh is quiet, not flashy, like she's sharing a secret just with me. One evening, after a long shift, I was trudging home when she waved me over. You look wiped, she said, holding up a thermos. Tea. I paused, not wanting to overstep, but that soft smile of hers pulled me in. I followed her inside. Her place was spotless, almost stark, like it was holding its breath for something more. No pictures on the walls, no stray jackets, just a small desk with a laptop and a neat pile of notebooks. We sat at her kitchen table, sipping tea that tasted of chamomile and something earthy I couldn't name. The silence was comfortable, not heavy. I noticed there wasn't a trace of anyone else in her life. No extra mug in the sink, no boots by the door, just her. You live alone? I asked, not meaning to dig. She nodded, swirling her tea. Yeah, for a couple years now. She didn't go further and I didn't press. The way she said it hinted at a story, but it wasn't my place to ask. We moved on to lighter stuff. Her favorite bakery in town, how the maple leaves were turning gold. I left her place that night feeling lighter, like I'd stumbled into a friendship I didn't see coming. But not everyone in the neighborhood is like Claire. Mrs. Larson's been getting bolder. Last weekend she called me over to check her sedan again. I figured it was another minor issue, so I showed up, same as always. She was in the driveway in a sleek dress that looked more suited for a night out than a Saturday morning. She smiled too wide, stood too close while I checked the engine. You're a natural at this, Lucas, she said, her hand grazing my arm as she passed me a screwdriver I didn't need. I fixed the issue, a loose connection to the battery, and started to head out. Come in for dinner, she said, leaning against the car. I made shepherd's pie. You can't say no to that. I gave a polite grin. Thanks, Mrs. Larson, but I've got plans. I didn't, but I wasn't about to stay. Her eyes flickered like she wasn't used to hearing no, but she just shrugged and said, "Next time, Lucas." I nodded and walked off, feeling her gaze on me as I crossed the street. Mrs. Delaney wasn't much different. A few days later she called about a noisy dryer. I grabbed my toolbox expecting a quick fix. She was in the laundry room in a fitted top and shorts, despite the cool Vermont air. "You're a lifesaver, Lucas," she said, standing close enough that I caught a whiff of her floral perfume. She started talking about her husband, how he's always off on business, how lonely the house feels. I kept my focus on the dryer, a frayed belt, simple enough, and mumbled, "Yeah, I bet," while I worked. When I finished, she handed me a glass of iced tea and said, "No need to run off. Stay a while." "Got another errand?" I said, keeping it friendly but firm. She gave a small pout, but I was already heading for the door. I'm not clueless. Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Delaney are attractive, no doubt. Part of me, the 24-year-old idiot part, felt the tug. They're bold, flirty, and not subtle about it. But it didn't sit right. It wasn't about me, it felt like they were chasing something to spice up their days. I didn't move here to play that role. Claire's different. I've been noticing it more with every conversation. She doesn't flirt or put on a show. She doesn't need to. There's a quiet resilience to her, like she's carried something heavy and kept going. One evening we were on her porch, the air crisp, streetlights humming. She was quieter than usual, staring into her tea like it held some truth. "You okay?" I asked. She paused, then met my eyes. "My ex-husband," she said, her voice even but soft. "He cheated on me. 2 years back. Found out he'd been lying for a long time. I thought I knew him. Turns out I was blind." She didn't break down or make a scene, just stated it like it was carved in stone. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there listening. "That's brutal," I said after a beat. "You didn't deserve that." She gave a small shrug, but her eyes carried weight. "I don't know what I deserved. Just know trust doesn't come easy now." I nodded, wanting to say she could rely on me, but it felt too forward, too much. Instead I said, "You're doing okay. This book you're writing, it's something special." Her smile was faint but real. "Thanks, Lucas. That means a lot." That moment stayed with me. I started comparing her to Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Delaney. They're all striking, no doubt, but Claire's beauty isn't loud. It's in how she listens, how she's okay with quiet. I started looking forward to our chats, to seeing her on that porch. I wasn't sure what it was yet, but it felt like something. Then the rumor started. I was dropping off meds for Mrs. Harper when she gave me a knowing look, lips tight like she was holding back a bombshell. "You're over at Mrs. Larson's a lot," she said, nodding toward her house. I brushed it off with a laugh. "Just fixing her car, Mrs. Harper?" But she arched an eyebrow. "People talk, Lucas. Watch yourself." Later, I overheard 2 neighbors by the mailboxes, voices low. "He's always at her place," one muttered. "Young guy like him, you know what she wants." My gut churned. I'd only been to Mrs. Larson's twice, both times for legit repairs. But this is a small town, people see what fits their story. I didn't know if Claire had heard, but she was different the next time I saw her. Still polite, still smiling, but it was strained, like she was holding something in. When I waved from my yard, she gave a quick nod and slipped inside. It felt like I'd messed up, but I couldn't pin down how. That night, I walked to her porch, ready to clear the air. I got as far as her steps, hand raised to knock, but froze. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, I'm not hooking up with Mrs. Larson?" It sounded dumb, defensive. I didn't want to put her on the spot. So I turned back, went home, and sat by my window. Claire was out on her porch, tea in hand, staring at the streetlights. Her face was blank, distant. I didn't know what was in her head, but I knew I didn't want to lose whatever we had. The gossip didn't let up, it got worse. By the end of my 3rd week in this quiet Vermont town, it felt like every glance was loaded. No one said much to my face, but I caught the whispers, the sidelong looks at the mailboxes. The rumor about me and Mrs. Larson had grown legs. I heard it from Mr. Grayson, the guy with the bad knee, while I was trimming his hedges. "Folks say you're spending a lot of time with that Larson woman," he said, gripping his cane. "Just be careful, son." I laughed it off, said it was nothing, just car repairs. His skeptical look said he wasn't convinced. Claire was the one I was worried about. She'd changed since the rumors kicked up. No more lingering porch talks. When I waved, she'd give a tight smile, maybe a nod, then head inside. It hit harder than I expected. I kept replaying our conversations, her opening up about her ex, the way her voice softened when she said my name. Whatever we had, it mattered, and I didn't want it buried under small-town gossip. Mrs. Larson wasn't helping. She kept finding excuses to call me over. Last week, it was a funny sound in her basement. I went because that's me, guy who fixes things. She was waiting in a flowy dress, smiling like she'd rehearsed it. While I checked the furnace, she lingered, asking about my day, my plans, standing closer than necessary. "You're too good for this town, Lucas," she said, her hand grazing my arm. I stepped back, kept it light. We stopped hiding. Claire and I started spending more time together, not caring who noticed. We'd stroll down the maple-lined streets of our little Vermont town, her hand brushing mine, sometimes slipping into it. We'd grab coffee at the cozy diner in town, with its mismatched mugs and rickety chairs, sitting for hours talking about everything and nothing. I'd tell her about the odd devices I fixed at the shop, and she'd share snippets of her novel, her voice steady but warm. It felt right, like the world clicked into place when we were together. The neighborhood didn't ease up right away. I'd catch stares, Mrs. Harper squinting from her porch, Mr. Grayson pausing his raking to watch. The rumors about me and Mrs. Larson lingered like stubborn fog. Small towns love their stories, especially the juicy ones, but I was done fretting over it. Claire was too. She'd chuckle when we passed someone staring, her eyes crinkling. "Let them gawk," she'd say. "They'll find something else soon enough." And she was right. The more we showed up as us, the less it seemed to matter. Still, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Delaney didn't fade out immediately. A few days after the scene outside Mrs. Larson's place, she called me over again. I almost didn't go, but her tone was different on the phone, quieter, less performative. When I arrived, she was in a plain sweater and jeans, no makeup, no act. "I owe you an apology," she said, standing in her driveway, arms crossed like she was bracing herself. "I got carried away. The rumors. I didn't mean for it to spiral. I've just been lonely." I nodded, unsure how to respond. "It's okay," I said after a moment. "I get it. Just, let's keep it simple from now on." She gave a small, almost sad laugh. "You're a good guy, Lucas." "She's lucky." She nodded toward Claire's house, and I realized she wasn't the schemer I'd painted her as. Just someone lost, grasping for something she didn't know how to find. I walked away feeling lighter, like a knot had loosened. Mrs. Delaney was different. She didn't apologize, but she stopped calling. I saw her once at the mailboxes and she gave a curt nod, no smile, no lingering gaze. Mr. Grayson mentioned she'd started taking pottery classes in town, something to fill her days. I didn't dwell on it. Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Delaney weren't bad people, just caught in their own voids, reaching for a spark. I wasn't that spark, and I never wanted to be. The real test came at the neighborhood meeting a week later, about repaving a potholed street. Everyone knew it was also a gossip fest. The whole block showed up. Mrs. Harper, Mr. Grayson, the young couple with the yappy terrier, even Mrs. Larson in the back, arms crossed. Claire came with me, her hand in mine as we walked into the community hall. I felt the stares but didn't flinch. I was done tiptoeing to keep the peace. When the paving talk wrapped, Mrs. Harper stood, her voice clipped. "Since we're here," she said, "maybe we should discuss certain behaviors, people coming and going at odd hours." She didn't name me, but the room knew. Silence fell and Claire's grip tightened. I stood before I could second-guess myself. "I know what you're getting at," I said, voice steady. "The talk about me and Mrs. Larson. Let's set it straight. I fixed her car, her furnace. That's it. I'm not here for drama or games. I'm just trying to be a good neighbor." I glanced at Claire, her eyes fixed on me, and something settled in my chest. "And yeah, I'm with Claire. I love her. I don't care if you think it's strange or wrong. It's real, and that's enough for me." The room went quiet. Then Mr. Grayson cleared his throat, and the couple with the dog started clapping, almost on impulse. Mrs. Larson stared at her hands, face flushed. Mrs. Harper sat down, mumbling about "just asking." Claire squeezed my hand, and when I looked at her, she was smiling, not her usual quiet smile, but something wide, alive. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered as we Saturday. "Yeah, I did," I said. "I'm not letting them mess this up." She didn't respond, just leaned her shoulder against mine, and that said enough. After that, things calmed. Not everyone was on board with us, but most stopped caring. Mrs. Harper still shot us the occasional glare, but even she started nodding when we passed. Claire and I kept doing our thing, coffee runs, walks under the maples, late-night porch talks. One evening we sat there, the air crisp, streetlights buzzing. She was quieter than usual, her tea mug balanced on her knee. "I used to think I didn't deserve this," she said softly. "Love, I mean. After my ex, I thought that part of me was gone. You changed that." I looked at her, her dark hair glowing under the light, her eyes steady but open. I didn't come here looking for love, I said. Just a clean slate. But you're the best thing I've found, Claire. I'm not going anywhere. She smiled, taking my hand. Good, she said. Because I'm not either. We started talking about the future, not in some grand, mapped-out way but in small moments. Over burgers at her place one night, she mentioned wanting to move somewhere quieter, maybe on the outskirts of town. Fewer nosy neighbors, she said, laughing. I liked the sound of it. A few weeks later we found a rental just outside the village. Nothing fancy, weathered siding, a small yard with a sagging gate, but it felt like ours. We moved in together, no big announcement, just us, some boxes and a friend's pickup. No ring, no hurry, just us. Our first night there we sat on the floor eating Thai takeout, the kitchen still packed up. Claire wore my old flannel, her hair a mess from hauling boxes. She looked at me, chopsticks poised, and said, "This feels right, doesn't it?" I nodded, throat tight. Yeah, it does. Life didn't turn perfect. I still worked at the shop, still ran errands for folks like Mrs. Harper. Claire kept writing her novel, piecing it together page by page. We'd bicker sometimes, about laundry, about who left the gate open, but it was never serious. We'd talk it through, laugh it off, move on. The town's gossip faded, replaced by new tales. Mrs. Larson started helping at the community garden. Mrs. Delaney stuck with her pottery. The world kept spinning and we kept building. I think back to that first day fixing Claire's mailbox, not knowing it was the start of something. I think about the rumors, the whispers, how Mrs. Larson and Mrs. Delaney tried to draw me in. I could have gotten caught up in the attention, the flattery, but I chose Claire, not because she was safe but because she was real. She saw me, not some role I could play. And I saw her, the woman who'd been broken but still believed in something more. People talk about love like it's fireworks and grand gestures. For us it was quieter. Just two people choosing each other no matter what the neighbors said. We fixed that gate in our new yard together, laughing when the screwdriver slipped, swearing when the hinges stuck. It wasn't perfect but it was ours.